Joseph Bello, it's good to see you. Hello, Matt. I recently tried a 10 by 10 workout, German volume training. Oh, yep. I think that is too much volume. What do you think of doing drop sets, doing a hard push knee exercise, going to an easier variation for 2 or 3 sets? So once again, folks, we look at this from a fundamental approach. What is our fundamental objective when we are training? What are we trying to accomplish? And a lot of times when people are going with volume training, they're trying to stimulate hypertrophy by basically kind of burning out the muscle. Now, you could do that any way that you like. You could do this 100 different ways. And honestly, as long as you get that fundamental objective met in the workout, it really doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if it's 2 sets or 20 sets. It doesn't matter if you're doing free weights or calisthenics. It doesn't matter if you're training light or if you're training heavy. As long as you're achieving the same fundamental objective, you're going to get the same fundamental result. In this case, we're going for hypertrophy. Now, for me, I'm always more of, again, with my freestyle intuitive training, I don't ever stick to any type of volume recommendation. And that's because your ability to achieve a fundamental objective 9 times out of 10 has nothing to do with how much work you actually do. It's not whether you do 2 sets or 5 sets or whatever. It's whether or not you get to that destination. It's, as I was joking with a friend of mine, because I just recently took a trip to Vermont, she was saying, well, when do you get there? I'm like, oh, we're getting there on Vermont time. And she's like, well, what does that mean? I was like, it means you get there when you get there. If it takes you 5 hours, it takes you 5 hours. If it takes you 5 minutes, it takes you 5 minutes. But you don't ever give someone instructions saying you have to drive for 20 minutes if you want to get to this destination. You could estimate and say it might take you about 20 minutes or so, but you don't ever tell someone asking for directions, you have to drive 20 minutes. Well, what if there's traffic? What if you drive 20 minutes and you're still not there? Do you just stop? Because that's what happens with a lot of people. Or what happens if you reach your destination sooner? Do you just drive endlessly in the parking lot, or you just keep going past it? Because again, that happens a lot in workouts as well. Don't make the amount of work you're doing the objective, unless the objective is literally to do that amount of work. Like if you have a goal of, I need to be able to do 100 push-ups to pass a PT test or something, then yes, the amount of work you're doing is the objective. You're not trying to actually stimulate anything throughout the body. But when we're actually training for fitness and not sport, which is a very different thing, don't base it on how much work you do. Because chances are very good, the second you say, this is how much work I'm supposed to do, you're either going to be over or under. What are the chances it's going to be dead on the amount you need for that day and time? Probably not. You're almost always going to overdo it and waste time and energy, or underdo it and not quite achieve the stimulus that you're looking for. Okay, rant over. Bottom line, you're trying to stimulate hypertrophy with this stuff, burn out the muscle. And usually with the grind style methods and stuff that we use here, we have our strength phase where we're practicing our skill and the ability to generate strength or proficiency in the skill of moving our body. And as soon as we start to get fatigued, we just blast it out with a couple of finishers and we're done. So you just keep going until you feel like the muscle's basically good and cooked. Could take 10 sets, could take 4. It depends on many different variables, most of which are going to be changing on a day-to-day basis. Some days you have more energy and motivation. Some days you can just push harder. Some days you're just not going to have it. And you're like, well, that's all my muscles got today. I was training a young lady today in the gym. She came in and I was like, woof, oh, yeah, rough night. And she's like, oh my gosh, I was on tarmac, a bad flight and everything. I'm terribly hungover and everything. Like, well, you just don't have as much today. Okay, so we modified our program to reflect that. We didn't go with nearly as much volume because you just don't have as much. But nonetheless, we still achieved the objective that we were there for. We just made it fit the abilities that you had. So can you cook out the muscle in 10 by 10? Absolutely. Will you probably do it before you hit 10 sets? Probably. And this is what it should feel like. You get that first 10 and you're like, that feels good. Second 10, yeah, I'm feeling nice. Third 10, you're like, okay, starting to really get kind of tired here. The fourth set, fifth set. And at some point you just kind of hit this wall where you're like, I'm just doing it to get through it. I'm not focused on technique. I'm not focusing on how well I do the exercise. I'm just doing it to get through it. Once you're there, you're no longer training. You're just doing manual labor. Go dig ditches. It's the same thing, right? So you want to be looking for when you start to really falter with your proficiency and your intensity and your focus. Once you hit that point, you're done. It's supposed to do 10 sets. Well, if you get it done in 6, you're done. Why spend the extra energy and time beyond that? Arguably, you could be creating a bit more stimulus, but again, we have a high cost to low reward situation. That's usually not a good formula. Drop sets are another strategy. Happens faster, right? So you've got a couple of hard sets and you drop set and you just banging those muscles out. You're just cooking them and frying them out for a little bit more, squeezing a little more of the juice out of the muscle. Sure, fundamentally, it's doing the same thing. You're reaching the same physiological state of just burning out the muscle. So then it just boils down largely to preference for you. What do you like to do more? Do you like the drop sets? Do you like the higher volume stuff? Do you like more intensity? Do you like pause rest training? It all does the same thing. Cook the muscle. And then you just use whatever you feel like. Whatever you feel is going to be the more effective way for you to, cook and fatigue that muscle out. And that's probably going to be what's best for you.